The envelope landed on Jordan's desk at 11:47 on a Friday night, and the moment she opened it, she knew her life would never be the same. No sender. No return address. Just a single photograph, her, standing outside the Shin Group tower, taken 3 days ago without her knowledge. And beneath it, 4 words written in red ink. "We know what you did." Jordan Reeves did not panic. She had not panicked since she was 19 years old, standing in a Memphis courtroom watching a judge dismiss the case against the man who had destroyed her family's business and walked away clean. That day she had made herself a promise. She would learn every system, every financial structure, every legal loophole that powerful men used to stay untouchable. And she would become the most dangerous thing any of them had ever encountered. She folded the photograph, put it in her coat pocket, and went back to work. Jordan had been operating in Seoul for 7 years. She was a fixer. The kind of person who did not exist on any corporate roster, whose name never appeared in meeting minutes, whose phone number was passed between powerful men in whispers. She cleaned up the messes that could not be cleaned up any other way. Shell companies, buried documents, vanishing witnesses, frozen accounts. She was precise, invisible, and extraordinarily expensive. And she had never once left a fingerprint. Jae-won Shin had found her through a referral she should have refused. He was 34, the youngest chairman in Shin Group's 100-year history. Sharp cheekbones, cold eyes, the kind of composed stillness that came from growing up inside a dynasty and learning early that showing emotion was a form of weakness. He had called her with a problem. A senior board member named Director Yu had been skimming funds through a Cayman Islands shell account. Standard corruption for men at that level. What made it dangerous was what Director Yu had discovered along the way: internal memos connecting Jae-won's late father to the disappearance of 3 labor organizers in 1998. Documents that could bring down not just the company but an entire generation of political alliances built on top of blood and silence. Jordan flew into Incheon on a Tuesday. She met Jae-won once, briefly, in a glass conference room on the 42nd floor. He looked at her across the table and said, "I was told you were the best." She said, "You were told correctly. Can you make this disappear without a trace? That's the only way I work." By Thursday she had mapped every account Director Yu controlled. By Monday she had frozen them, recovered the documents, and constructed a paper trail that made it appear Director Yu had resigned voluntarily for health reasons. Clean, surgical, total. Jae-won called her back into his office to thank her in person. She had planned to stay no longer than 10 minutes. She stayed for 2 hours. He was not what she had expected. He did not treat her the way clients treated her, like a tool, useful and disposable. He leaned back in his chair and asked her how she had learned to read financial structures the way she did. He asked her if she ever felt the weight of what she carried. He looked at her, fully, the way almost no one in her professional life ever had. She told herself it was a technique. That men like him were trained from birth to make people feel seen. That the warmth in his voice was calculated and the interest in his eyes was performance. She told herself that for a long time. He called again 2 months later. A leaked acquisition contract. She handled it in 4 days. Then again, a hostile takeover attempt from a rival conglomerate. She neutralized it in a week. The jobs kept coming, and they kept getting smaller, and she understood what that meant. He was manufacturing reasons to keep her in his orbit. What unsettled her was that she kept saying yes. By the end of the first year she knew Shin Group better than most of his own executives. She had walked every floor of the tower. She had sat across from his mother at a dinner she never should have attended. And somewhere in the space between late nights and long conversations, she had started to feel something she had spent her entire adult life refusing to feel. She was careful. She was always careful. But careful had never accounted for Jae-won Shin. One evening she stayed late in the satellite office he had set up for her on the 38th floor. She was cross-referencing vendor contracts when a folder appeared in a shared drive she had never been given access to. Someone had moved it there by mistake. She almost closed the window. She didn't. Inside was a legal brief. Her name was on the first page. She read it once quickly. Then she read it again slowly. Her hands were completely still. Her face did not move. But something inside her, something that had survived Memphis and 7 years in the shadows and every dangerous man she had ever outmaneuvered, went ice cold. Jae-won had been constructing a case against her for 18 months. Every job she had run for him, reframed. Director Yu's frozen accounts, illegal asset seizure. The recovered documents, destruction of legally protected corporate records. 6 other operations she had executed at his direct request, all repositioned in the brief as crimes she had committed independently, without authorization, for personal financial gain. His name appeared nowhere. Her fingerprints were everywhere. He had made sure of that from the beginning. Attached to the brief was a handwritten note in his handwriting. Once the acquisition closes, file it. She sat in that office for exactly 4 minutes. She allowed herself those 4 minutes, to feel it fully, the specific devastation of betrayal from someone you had trusted, the particular humiliation of having been outmaneuvered by the one person you had let your guard down for. She felt every second of it. Then she closed the folder, straightened her jacket, and walked out. She did not run. Running would confirm everything in the brief. And Jordan Reeves had not survived this long by running from anything. The acquisition was scheduled to close in 11 days. She had 9. She called one of the board members she had quietly profiled over the past year, a man named Director Lim who had been systematically cut out of Jae-won's inner circle and had the barely concealed resentment to prove it. She met him in a private room at a restaurant in Gangnam. She placed a single document on the table between them. Director Lim looked at it for a long time. Then he looked at her. "Where did you get this?" "That's not the question you should be asking," she said. "The question you should be asking is what happens to everyone in that building when this goes public. And it will go public, unless the people with the authority to stop it choose to act first." She showed him the 1998 documents. She showed him the legal brief with her name on it. She let the silence do its work. Director Lim said quietly, "He would do this to you." "He already did," she said. "The question is what he'll do to you when your usefulness runs out." 2 board members flipped within 48 hours. Jordan moved fast. She filed a shareholder complaint 2 days before the acquisition close, triggering a mandatory board review that froze the merger completely. Inside that filing was a full documented accounting of 6 years of financial misconduct, the shell accounts, the suppressed labor investigation, the illegal asset transfers that Jae-won had inherited from his father and protected with deliberate silence. The Korea Financial Intelligence Unit opened a formal investigation the same afternoon. Jae-won called her that night. She answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was controlled but she could hear something underneath it that she had never heard from him before. "Fear. Jordan, whatever you think you're doing, stop. You don't understand the scale of what you're moving against." "I understand it perfectly," she said. "I mapped it. I protected you. For 2 years I kept your name out of every conversation, every filing. Until you needed a name to put in a brief," she said. "I found the note, Jae-won." The silence stretched long enough that she could hear him breathing. "The acquisition is dead," she continued, her voice even and unhurried. "The board is moving to remove you. The brief you built against me has been submitted to my attorney as evidence of criminal conspiracy. You have approximately 72 hours before this reaches a point you cannot manage from inside that building. I would use the time wisely." She hung up. The merger collapsed on a Wednesday. By Friday, 3 senior executives had been formally indicted. Within 6 weeks, Jae-won Shin had resigned the chairmanship under board mandate, his personal assets frozen, his family name, that 100-year dynasty built on silence and buried bodies, finally cracking open under the weight of everything it had tried to hide. Jordan Reeves flew out of Incheon on a Thursday morning. She carried no documents, no files, no evidence of anything. Everything she had ever needed she had kept inside her own mind, because she had learned a long time ago that the only safe place to store a weapon was somewhere no one else could reach it. She looked out the window as Seoul shrank beneath the clouds and thought about a courtroom in Memphis and a 19-year-old girl who had watched justice fail and decided she would become something justice never could. She had built his defenses from the inside. She had dismantled his empire the same way. And she had done it without breaking a single rule that mattered.